One of the great things about Batman is that he does have, like, as everybody knows, just about the best rogues gallery of any superhero, any comic book character.
It seems like Batman's villains are all sick. They all have obsessions.
They were all interesting, grotesque types. They weren't just guys in suits. They were all as interesting and quirky as Batman himself was.
What? You have who tied up where?
Well, the cool thing about the Batman villains is they all had their own individual fetish and motif. It's once you get to know them, the complexity in their personalities is what makes them really interesting.
Wait! I got a crisis here!
My dear, you don't know the meaning of the word.
As Batman has no true superpowers, few of his enemies do either. It's a psychological need that drives Batman to be Batman, and I think it's a very similar psychological quirk that creates his villains.
I'd like to dislocate them both.
The villains give direction to the show. You can even call them the protagonist. They're the ones who want to get to this goal, and Batman's their antagonist, and he's going to stop them.
What say we have a little talk, just like old times?
We did get to spend so much time with the villains. We kind of got to understand, you know, their motivations and their backstory, and sometimes that was the story.
Say hello to your new, improved Harley Quinn!
A lot of Batman's villains, they've planned something out, and it's pretty diabolical, and Batman finds himself caught up in this machine trying to figure out how he's going to end up stopping it, and doing so before anybody gets hurt.
Oh, no.
We all have the good side and the bad side. It exists in every single one of us.
You're breaking my heart. Sayonara, chumps.
And once you can relate to it, it's captivating.
The Batman villains always seem like they're having a lot of fun.
There was never any shortage of good Batman villains.
You're only as good as the villain you fight.
Got it? Clayface. No! Hey!
Mother Dios! Clayface!
There's actually been any number of Clayfaces. I know at the time that we did the show, there had been at least 3 different really strong incarnations of him. The very first Clayface in the comics was a guy named Basil Carlo, who was an old-school horror movie actor. And there was one named Matt Hagen. He's the one who dove into the underground pool of clay and got turned into Clayface. So he was kind of a combination of those two.
His strength is inhuman. Could be chemically induced.
He's sort of an amalgam of all the Clayfaces in the comics.
We kind of picked and chose among the different versions of Clayface in the comics. And then, of course, the shape-shifting thing was, you know, again, just a natural for cartoons. You know, it's like, that was just like, oh yeah, we're all over that.
Great thing about being a shapeshifter. I can blend in with the crowd outside, make my getaway, and rip off some other joint.
The thing that people remember the most about our version of Clayface was just the amazing visuals that we were able to pull off.
Stay out of it.
We were amazingly fortunate that we got the great Japanese animation studio, T.A.S, because they just really went to town on all the shape-shifting stuff.
The original Clayface was a kind of a complicated design. For the New Adventure season, we decided to simplify him slightly. He's a little more streamlined.
It wasn't a radical departure from the way he looked before, but again, he was a little bit more angular. He didn't look quite as melty.
Drippy and gooey and fun.
Less surface detail, less bumps and stuff.
He looked a little bit more like a giant mud man instead of just a big pile of vomit.
Now we can cut out the games.
Quinn.
Rider-Rooney! Give me some sugar, baby.
She just began as a sort of a hench girl.
She was never meant to be more than just a one-shot character. Deanie came up with the idea for Harley.
I patterned her a little bit after my friend Arlene Sorkin, who TV comedian, and wound up doing her voice also.
Rider-Rooney!
And outside of Lucille Ball, I don't know who could have played Harley as well as Arlene did.
Look! Piano!
And we thought, wouldn't it be great if it turns out she's got a very dark connection to the Joker? In fact, that she was his doctor in the insane asylum, and he kind of seduced her and snapped her mind. So I came up with the name Harley Quinn because that seemed very clownish.
Harley Quinzel. Rework it a bit, and you get Harley Quinn.
Looking at actual Harlequins, the thing is, their costumes are just covered with design work. And but the one thing that I did notice was the diamond shapes that they were covered in. So that was something that I was able to incorporate into the Harley design.
Harley's look was probably the least changed of all the villains. Basically, she was just slimmed down slightly, but the design in of itself wasn't dramatic.
She's someone who kind of loves a little bit too much and too unwisely, and that's her downfall.
It's kind of like, you know, the big dumb thug in high school that has the cute young cheerleader, and she just doesn't know how bad this guy is, and you want to kind of rescue her.
It's the most pathetic thing, but she works beautifully. You're laughing at her because she has a sense of humor about it.
She was the perfect foil for the Joker, where he couldn't resist being without her, but every time she was around, he had to sort of think about her before he would commit his next offense.
Somewhere deep down in whatever shriveled up little nut he has for a heart, there might be a little bit of affection for her. I think Harley is a very accessible villain, and I think she's maybe not as dark as some of the others are painted.
You immediately gravitate to her because she is, at her core, she's pretty innocent.
I think a lot of fans like that. They like that she is someone who can get out of danger with a smile and a little laugh and just sort of somersault away.
Face it, Harl, this stinks. You're a certified nutso wanted in 12 states and hopelessly in love with a psychopathic clown. At what point did my life go Looney Tunes?
The Joker.
Let the good times roll!
You know, the thing with the Joker is that in the long comic book history of the character, he started off as pretty much a straight homicidal maniac, and then they kind of made him goofier and goofier. And then he became kind of a joke.
Mother always said I had talent.
And then this time they brought him back as a serious, psychotic killer.
The Joker in our show could not kill because it was a children's television show.
Instead of him murdering people, we would have him give him that hideous Joker grin, which in its own way is almost worse.
I really have to congratulate myself on this one.
I never liked clowns. Yeah, they always gave me the willies.
Joker's the perfect Batman villain because he's the antithesis of Batman.
A bat in the hand is worth two in the belfry.
It's antimatter and matter facing each other.
I don't really know why he's such a perfect yin to Batman's yang, because the characters are really dissimilar. I mean, there's nothing, you know, historical about clowns and bats.
You're losing your edge.
Joker is the flip side of Batman. Batman's grim, Joker's happy.
The personal hatred that the Joker has towards Batman, the fact that he just wanted the limelight.
A countdown of victims that will end at midnight, unless our dear Dark Knight stops me first.
Mark Hamill just nailed that part perfectly. When the second we heard that scary laugh, we knew he had the Joker.
It's actually really fun to watch him perform the character because all of the other actors are all seated and Mark has to stand to do it, and he gets his whole body into it.
You could actually videotape Mark Hamill recording the voice and use some of that for the animation. He is so articulate in his physical acting.
What made the Joker so much fun was that he didn't have anything really at stake. He just set out to do whatever he wanted, and it was more of a challenge to Batman to say, try and catch me.
It's time I capped off our feud with his ultimate humiliation.
I don't know if there's another situation in pop culture villains where the villain and the hero are just so white and black.
Mr. Freeze.
Some characters are you know, there's not a lot there to work with in their original state. In the comics, with Mr. Freeze, we had a kind of a cool name and a guy in a walking refrigerator. In thinking about the character, Bruce and I decided maybe there's some great tragedy in his life that basically killed him emotionally, and so he's just a shell of a man, maybe going for, you know, for vengeance because he grieves for a great loss.
Our first design on Mr. Freeze, going back to the very beginning of Batman the Animated Series, I had contacted Mike Mignola, who was a really well-known comic book artist. This was before he became famous for Hellboy, and he came up with this really, really severely retro-looking Mr. Freeze design, which looked like this old-school-looking, you know, almost robot suit.
We did a revamp. We wanted to tweak him a bit. Sub-Zero had been done, and essentially sort of took away his motivation by curing his wife. So we kind of decided to cut off his head and make him a robot.
So we thought if we were going to bring Mr. Freeze back again, we had to give him all new motivation. It became about the fact that, you know, he's separated from his wife now. You know, she's alive, but he's a monster now, and he can never be with her. So it became all about him just hating everybody and hating everything and destroying everything that everybody loves, you know, so they could feel the same amount of pain that he feels. I thought this was all good stuff. This was all good story material. So, and of course, we had to go back and redesign his costume again. And it's still kind of retro, but it's a little bit slicker, like we did with a lot of the revamped characters. We put a lot more black on it.
We're sensitive to him because he had love, he had emotion, he had all these feelings, and they were taken from him. And he so desires to have them back, and yet has no capability to actually feel them.
Up until the time we were doing Batman Beyond, you know, we were always found a different way of going with him, and it was always fun to revisit Mr. Freeze and see what he was up to.
There's no hope for me, or you, or your city. Everyone's going to feel my loss.
The Penguin.
Penguin was always a tricky one. He was one of those characters that, again, had a really good visual in the comics.
The Penguin can be a totally comical character. It's easy because of how he is drawn. He's so round. He's a penguin.
He's a tough villain because he's just a chubby guy, and even though he might be great with the umbrella and he might have all kinds of judo moves and all that, you don't feel that he's a great threat against, a physical threat against Batman.
Well, in the redesign, we went back to the original source material of the Penguin that differed from the Batman animated series and from the movie.
One of the joys of doing the revamp was finally getting able to do the Jack Burnley Penguin design. Kind of a 19th century British gentleman caricature.
I'm a legitimate businessman now. I don't want to draw attention to myself.
Ideally, you want to get a voice with character, meaning that the actor has a quality to his voice all by itself without putting on a cartoon voice.
I've been a huge Paul Williams fan, like forever, and he had just exactly the right vocal quality for the Penguin.
He was never going to become the dark and scary super villain that someone like the Joker would. So Paul's voice was appropriate for that version of the Penguin.
Living well is the best revenge.
He's trying to turn over a new leaf, and he's trying to pretend to everybody that he's a respectable gentleman of society now and not really a criminal, and of course he's doing all kinds of, you know, dastardly deeds out of the back.
We kind of felt like, you know, for the new show, because he wasn't the supervillain anymore, it didn't seem appropriate to give him all the umbrella stick.
My way would have been so much more pleasant.
But he's still a thug. He's still a criminal. So he gets to have a machine gun hidden in one.
Poison Ivy.
She's stunning. She's got a waist about that big. She's got a beautiful curvaceous figure. She's got a great face.
Pucker up.
But she was also a serious character.
Your hyenas have been watering my plants again. One more time and they're mulch.
In the original Batman series, she was played more human, who had a plant motif. With the New Adventures, it was decided to push her more in the otherworldly territory by making her skin slightly green and making her more elfin looking.
Who told you to do that?
The first Poison Ivy sort of established the kind of character that she was, this vixen who just was plant nuts.
While she cares about plants, she doesn't care so much about people.
I think the stuff is wearing off.
Can't have that. Give him another shot.
Trouncing all over men's emotions and controlling them.
Time for a goodnight kiss.
A bit more of the plant gimmick got brought into her character. The idea of controlling men through certain lipstick and pheromones and basically being the woman that no man can resist.
Step lively there, Brucey.
About the only human being that she ever shows really any sign of affection for at all is Harley. And that's more just kind of like in a big sister kind of way.
Aw, gee, Harley, you broke our new toy.
There were some really strong episodes where she developed her own offspring.
What are you?
She actually created a bride for Bruce Wayne.
Why, Bruce? I'm your wife.
So you can do really bizarre plant, flesh things that are really icky, but they're fun stories to watch.
She's an interesting, dark character.
Merry Christmas, darling.
Raise a Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul was a big-time member of the Batman Rogues Galleries to comic book fans, but he had never appeared in any other media. You know, he'd never been in any of the cartoons or the TV shows or anything, so people at home didn't know who the heck he was. But us, being hardcore comic book geeks and really loving those original Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Ra's al Ghul stories, we really wanted to do them.
He represents a break from Batman's traditional rogues gallery in that he's not really born of Gotham City. He's from overseas. He's a leader of a global empire of assassins. Nobody really knows his name, or they've heard whispers of it, yet the man is immensely wealthy, immensely powerful.
The strange thing about Ra's is he really wants to preserve the Earth. He sees modern technology and the way things are going as destructive. But he has no problem with offing as many people as possible in order to preserve the planet. And Batman clearly can't allow him to do that.
We didn't want to do any ghost stories, but with Ra's al Ghul it made sense because he's a very spiritual guy. This guy been living forever.
He's relatively immortal. He's lived hundreds of years and has a beautiful daughter that loves Batman. And that makes things tough because he kind of likes her too.
It's the ultimate temptation story, because by agreeing to follow Ra's, Batman can accomplish everything he set out to do: wipe out crime, restore order, and kind of in a weird way get his father back. But Batman is too clever to see for that. He knows that as attractive as a lot of that is, he can't succumb to that. That's truly going to evil.
The Riddler.
Hey, diddle diddle. Time for a riddle.
Boy, oh boy, the Riddler. What do we do with the Riddler?
Okay, here's this guy who's going to commit all these crimes, and he sends a bunch of clues to Batman, and Batman, bang, 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 figures out the clues and stops the Riddler from committing his crimes and hauls him off to jail.
It was hard not to make the show feel too much like the 60s Adam West show, where people are standing around trying to solve a riddle.
Everybody kind of has in their mind, they can't help it, they think of the late Frank Gorshin as the Riddler. He had left such a mark on everybody's mind as to what that character was.
He was brilliant. He, was the Riddler. But the thing is, his Riddler was very similar to the Joker's personality. And knowing that we were going to do that really manic Joker, we knew we had to do something different with the Riddler. We didn't want to just him be just a Joker clone.
I thought, let's bring in John Glover, because there is a quality to his voice that's scary. Just a little. He's the nicest man on the planet, but there's something about him that's a little bit scary.
On a pure graphic approach, we tried to keep him lean, cut, so that he could pose a physical threat if he needed to. We know we can get him into a fight with Batman, But are we going to be able to sell the audience on this riddle? Are we going to make it too complicated to where no one ever would have figured this out to begin with?
So it was hard to make a show where you could do that, make the riddles seem interesting.
And it's better if the riddles are like hidden things that you don't quite see, you don't quite know what's happening.
So we tried to make him smart and to offer the threat that no one was going to be able to outsmart him.
Yeah! Scarecrow.
Scared you, didn't I?
Scarecrow was a character who went through a number of evolutions. Originally, the character was very cerebral. You know, Jonathan Crane was a guy who was experimenting with a fear drug, but there was always something a little bit not too quite scary about him.
The Scarecrow should be kind of scary, and no matter what you do with it, a guy with, you know, a jack-o'-lantern face and Scarecrow clothes is not scary.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the change came about of the look. That may have come from Bruce.
He wanted to go from just making him a scarecrow to almost appearing like a corpse. And he evolved the most of all the characters. We got darker and darker and darker with the character.
So we took a really radical departure, and we kind of made him look, you know, we put the noose around his neck and kind of gave him like kind of Western preacher clothes and gave him like this, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface kind of look, and really had nothing to do with being a scarecrow per se, but he was definitely scary.
He looked like a hanged man who had been cut down and you know, had gone off to terrorize people. We weren't even sure if there was an actual guy in the suit.
When we all saw that model, we went, oh, yes, that's it.
Fear is power.
On the redesign, I believe we recast him, and Jeffrey Combs did his voice, the Reanimator.
We all watched it come to life. We actually saw it come to life and said, that's absolutely right. That is how that voice should be for that drawing.
What's the use of providing me with test patients if you're going to lose them? You should have monitored him more carefully.
They just had him whisper, and that whispery rasp was so scary. They realized, you know, maybe we were trying too hard earlier. Maybe you didn't need that much. Just a really scary, dark-looking guy with the noose around his neck and a nice raspy whisper. Yeah, that'll do it. That's pretty scary.
Two-Face. Attention, people of Gotham City.
I love Two-Face. Two-Face was one of my favorite villains.
He's right up there with the Joker as far as Batman's key villains go.
He's a guy that is respected in society and a friend of Bruce Wayne. And he has a horrible accident and becomes a maniacal, schizophrenic killer.
Alan Burnett did come up with the innovation of actually giving him psychological problems before he even became Two-Face. He was already kind of having a Jekyll and Hyde thing even before that, and then the accident that turns him into Two-Face just really exacerbated the problem.
One of the things that we took from the more recent comic books was the idea that when Batman started his career as Batman, he had a secret ally in the city that was Harvey Dent, the district attorney. And so it becomes very tragic when Two-Face is scarred and he becomes a villain, because it's like Batman lost one of the true friends that he had.
You're too late, Batman. Better find yourself another mask.
It's not any radical departure from what he looks like in the comics. I mean, the one innovation that I've seen other artists, you know, carry on afterwards, which is kind of neat, is half black, half white. You know, it's like that's literally the character.
We just basically simplified it, changed the color of his face, changed some of the features a little bit, but the opposite sides of his personality are represented in color rather than a lot of surface detail.
It looked even better in the revamped episodes when he gave him that real squared off shoulders and the real sharp lines on his suit. I mean, he looked even slicker.
He still flips the coin. He still has the duality and the crimes based on twos. He adapted the best to the new design, I think, and to the new series, because he really felt very much like the old character.
I just think he's like one of the top 10 comic book villains of all time.
Order in the court in the matter of the People versus Harvey Dent. How does the prisoner plead?
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
Scarface.
Better look sharp, you smugs. Scarface is back.
Of all the new Batman villains they've introduced into the comics over the last, 20 or 30 years, the Scarface and Ventriloquist seem to me the most like classic Batman villains.
Nobody pulls my strings, dummy. Especially not you.
But you're not real!
That notion of the ventriloquist who doesn't even know the dummy is calling the shots fits right into Batman's world.
This evil dummy is coming out of his head.
The ventriloquist himself was so demented and yet played so much like your grandfather or your uncle.
Scarface and the ventriloquist are another set of characters where you have the option to hire one actor to do both voices or hire two different actors so that you get completely different sounds. Really good voice actors can do both of those voices.
George Zanza did the voice, and it was perfect. He did a wonderful job.
He was so great. He was so schizophrenic and wonderful. And people ask, is that the same guy?
Okay, dummy, yank the gag.
Yes, Mr. Scarface.
We wanted to make the dummy as live as possible, so we did have scenes where the dummy was by itself. Batman would sneak into the room, and he'd look at this dummy, and it seems alive. It even startles Batman.
The puppet was the real challenge, and yet he had to take care of the guy that was talking, so who does he hit, and who does he beat up, and ended up beating up both, which was great.
And the reason really is because we can inflict all sorts of hideous violence on the dummy. You can shoot him up like, you can cut him into pieces, you can do hideous things to him that you could never get away with on a person. I don't know, would you want to?
I just think Scarface is one of the best villains. He's one of these villains that you're horrified and you laugh at the same time, and those are the best villains.
Arnold, don't do this.
It's out of my hands.
He's the puppet, not you.